Good morning, old sport. Jay Gatsby here, and I must say what a marvelous gathering we have ahead of us today. You see, I've spent my life chasing dreams across the bay, believing that happiness is just out of reach, but the truth is, the great stories of Broadway, just like Scripture, remind us that the deepest meaning in life isn't found in wealth or glamour, but in love, in hope, and in grace. So welcome to University Christian Church here in San Diego for our 8th annual Theology of Broadway series. You're invited to dream with us, not of parties that fade, but of a life that truly lasts. Welcome to worship, old sport.
For better or worse, for rich or for poor, my husband has delivered on the rich part, but the better, I'm not sure. And then to learn my soldier has returned. It's a blessing and a curse. Is it for better or for worse? To have and to hold, till death do us part. So certain that my soldier had been lost, and with him half my heart. I spoke those words to gain security. It was maybe a mistake, and the only choice to make. And so I built a home beyond my childhood dreams. I built the perfect place to stay, locked away, for better or worse. When we came out east, I learned that it is not what feels the best, it is what will hurt the least. When I thought that I might start again, got the thoughts out of my head, had a child with him instead. I knew I had to build a home and make it last, and fill it up with all the reasons not to think about the past. Danced with those soldiers like they were ghosts. We kissed them with unspoken last goodbyes, so certain that they were gone. We mourned them and then moved on, hoping half a heart's enough to build upon. For better or worse, my vows have been made. I'm smart enough to know that I'd lose everything if I ever strayed. All the while, my husband has his fun, and the roles are not reversed. It's for the better and the worst. A melody drifting across the bay, a song of a summer from long ago, a chorus that amplifies every last compromise. What good comes from knowing that he survived? What good comes from knowing what he became? To know there's an open door where there wasn't one before, and I wonder what he'd do if I walk Do you know what I did when my baby was born? You don't, because no one was there. My baby was maybe an hour old, and Tom was God knows where. Coming out of the ether, my head full of smoke. It's a girl, the nurse said, and I broke. Do you know what I did when my baby was born? When I found out that she was a she, I prayed that my beautiful child would be the fool that I could never be. Let my girl be a fool to whom it won't occur that the choices she makes in this life are never hers, never hers, never hers. The best thing a girl can be in this world is a beautiful little fool. The best thing a girl can be in this world is a beautiful little fool. The best thing a girl can be in this world is charming and blithe, unpolished repose, an absolute rose, and a fool.
This is a reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. Hear what God's Spirit is saying to you. Vanity of vanities, said the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he had taken under the sun? One generation passes away, and another generation comes. But the earth abideth forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and has set on the place where he arose. The wind goes south and turns about unto the north. It turns around continually, and the wind returns again to where it came from. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. It goes back to the place from whence it came, and then it returns again. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Here ends the readings of the word that gives us insight unto God. May God grant us the wisdom and the courage for interpretation.
The party is roaring on. Picture it as people pour into a mansion, and the band pipes up and begins to play. And more people come, and they're drinking from literal fountains of champagne. They sing, they dance. It may be prohibition outside in 1922, but not in J. Gatsby's mansion, which brings together people from all walks of life. An unlikely band of people, all there celebrating. The Roaring '20s. Yes, their host is the illustrious, the infamous, yet the host that no one quite seems to know, J. Gatsby.
Who is he exactly? I mean, is he descended from royalty? Where did he get that money? Were his parents wealthy? Or did he make it illegally from murder, or even worse in the 1920s, bootlegging? Nobody quite knows. And the host, just like those parties, seem to evaporate like the champagne afterwards. People wondering, did that really even happen? Was that real? The Great Gatsby, vanity of vanities. We thought The Great Gatsby might be a fun way to kick off the Theology of Broadway, because even if you haven't seen the Broadway musical, which is relatively new, I bet you're familiar with the story, because you can hardly graduate high school in the United States without having to have read The Great Gatsby. And I may have some spoilers, but you've had a literal century to catch up on the story, so I don't feel too bad about that. J. Gatsby, the illustrious host of all of these incredible parties on the West Egg of Long Island, where all the new money is. The East Egg is where the old money is. And J. Gatsby, try as he might, isn't quite like the old money Buchanans on the other side of the bay. J. Gatsby makes friends with our narrator from The Great Gatsby, Nick, who is his neighbor and who happens to be the cousin of Daisy Buchanan. And as we discover, Gatsby is deeply in love with Daisy Buchanan, who he had met 5 years ago at an officers' ball in Louisville. And he picked this mansion across the bay from Daisy because he was so close to her, so close yet so far away. It was symbolized by the green flashing light at the end of her dock, which he could see, but he couldn't quite reach. Just like Daisy herself. He created all of these parties, this beautiful presence and persona, in the hopes that he might lure Daisy to his home so that he might reconnect with her, creating an incredible experience for everyone around, but never quite seeing Daisy there. Vanity of vanities. As the story goes on, we of course discover that J. Gatsby was born James Gatz and was not from the Midwest, from wealthy parents, as he had said, but instead was born to dirt poor farmers. And he grabbed on to this American dream, the mirage of the American dream, and created himself a new identity, J. Gatsby, to fulfill the American dream, to live into wealth and power, and all he needed, and all he really wanted, was the love of his life, Daisy Buchanan. But you know, what happened to Gatsby is what happens to a lot of people whenever they put all of their needs, all of their wants onto a single person. They can never deliver. They can never be exactly who or what you want them to be. And Gatsby finds that what he thinks he wants is evaporating in front of him. He has provided a chance for everyone to eat, drink, and be merry, but he cannot be merry himself. He cannot truly enjoy life himself. You know, the book of Ecclesiastes is an interesting book in the Bible, because if you go through and you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it presents a different kind of interpretation about what life is than you find in many other places. I think whenever we go to the Bible expecting a unified view like one single theology, we get disappointed because that's not what we get. Instead, what we get is different people's interpretations, different people's understandings based on what was happening. And so take, for instance, the book of Job. In the book of Job, we've got someone who is suffering, someone who is living in a world and is miserable as he loses thing after thing. And the only explanation Job can come up with is, God must be putting me through this. God must be causing me to suffer. That's the interpretation of that book as he tries to figure out why it is that he is suffering. But the theology, the interpretation that we get in Ecclesiastes isn't that at all. In fact, God isn't even mentioned in the book of Ecclesiastes. Did you know that? You go through and read it, God is not explicitly mentioned. And we don't find a God who is all-powerful or a God who is causing suffering in the world. Instead, the author of Ecclesiastes, who we often call Kohelet looks out and says, what is the purpose of life? One generation comes and then they die off, and then another generation comes. It's like in the Great Gatsby musical, the party is roaring on. It roars on at the beginning, it roars on at the end. It is a constant cycle. Kohelet says this is what life is like, one cycle after another. He says, vanity of vanities. What's the point of all the work and all the toil? Maybe the best thing we can do is eat, drink, and be merry. What can we do in this life, Kohelet wonders? Is life just evaporating in front of us? And yet, it does leave the reader with a very grounded vision of what life can be if you're present in the moment. That there are seasons of our lives, right? For everything there is a season, and some are good, some are bad. Some are joyful, some are full of suffering, but to make it through the seasons and to try to be present in the here and now. Gatsby, though, has a tough time being present in the here and now. Even though he has everything that he might possibly want, he still doesn't have that love. Nick is able to arrange a meeting between Gatsby and Daisy. They meet for tea, and Daisy is receptive to Gatsby's charm, even though she's married to Tom. Their marriage is rocky, and he has a wandering eye. And so Daisy is amenable to Gatsby, and their romance quickly restarts. But as I said, Gatsby wants Daisy to be someone who, at the end of the day, she really isn't. And what he really wants to do is to go back and to recreate the past. When he met Daisy, he didn't have a penny to his name, and so he made all this money in bootlegging so that he could give her the life that he felt like she deserved. But in doing so, he lost those 5 years, and he wants to go back 5 years ago. He wants Daisy to renounce her love for Tom and to embrace him fully. He wants to recreate an idealized past. And you know, we always get into trouble when we try to do that. The United States is in trouble right now as it tries to do that, as it tries to create a past of racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, as it tries to strip away rights, as it embraces things like white power and privilege. Too often, when people look back at the past, they look at the past with rose-colored glasses, and they forget that it is not rose-colored for everyone, and it's often not as good as it was remembered. And so Gatsby wants to create this idealized past, and he can't do it. And ultimately, Gatsby himself finds that he is a casualty of the carelessness of the wealth and privilege that the Buchanans exercise. That Gatsby's death, that goes unmourned by anyone other than Nick, is a symbol of what American wealth and income inequality does to the country. You see, F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby is a critique of the American system. It is a critique of valuing only wealth and power. It shows us that ultimately all of that leads to suffering. Vanity of vanities, you see? That ultimately, at the end of the day, what we need for human flourishing is, yes, we need enough to survive, and we need love, we need hope, we need the things that make us human beings, you see? And The Great Gatsby is also a critique of the mirage of the American dream. That is, that everybody has equal opportunity to create whatever they want, to be whoever they want. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, a bootless man cannot pull himself up by his bootstraps. See? The mirage of the American dream that is possible for some and yet not possible for other people. And yet, the American dream is about more than wealth and power. The American dream ought to be the highest ideals of our nation, shouldn't it? The American dream ought to be the dream where everybody has enough, where everyone has access to health care, where everyone can access the reproductive health that they need, where everyone has access to mental health services, where everybody is valued regardless of their race or their gender or their sexual orientation or their class, a place where everyone is able to exercise their freedom of speech and freedom of religion. That is the American dream, and that American dream I'm not ready to let die. I'm not ready to let die, no matter how much this administration says it's time to let that die. I am not ready to let that die, because that is the dream that we should all embrace as a nation. And you know what other dream I'm not ready to let die? God's dream, the basileia of God, in which absolutely everyone has inherent worth and dignity, and justice in this world creates peace in our society. And so I think that ultimately, Gatsby points us to what America can be at its worst whenever all it is obsessed with is money and power. And it teaches us that truly what we ought to be embracing is love. Not an idealized love that makes people into who we want them to be, but instead a love that accepts people as they already are. And whenever we're able to do that, we are living into the gospel call. And then we really can eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy the moments that we have. Because there is wisdom in that. Looking around and seeing this world for what it is, being grateful for the moments that we have. And then the party can go roaring on. May we join that party, the feast of God, in which everyone is welcome and everyone has enough. And may we, as we sit down at that feast where the party is roaring, invite everyone to sit down at the table. May it be so, and thanks be to God. Amen.